The caterhamracer.com Winter Euro Series is sponsored by DPR Motorsport, your competitive advantage. FPZERO Simulators, providing professional-grade simulators for your home and our drivers. And by just Add Lightness, high-performance LED lights and accessories for the Caterham 7. And there's additional support from Design and Display Structures and Darren Burke, Performance Driver Coach. So, ladies and gents, we've made it, not just to the end of 2021, but to the final meeting, the final race of this very sort of impromptu season to end things in caterhamracer.com world. This is it, the grand final of the caterhamracer.com Winter Euro Series. We've travelled to the virtual Eiffel Mountains and to the Nurburgring Grand Prix circuit, where we'll see the last 25-minute race to decide who becomes the Winter Euro Series champion. We've had 4 heats and a last chance saloon race, and it all comes down to this, who gets the bragging rights from this off-season encounter. Scott Woodwiss and Chris Hutchinson back in the commentary box again. Chris, it all comes down to this. It is the 18 top drivers that have come through all the races that we've had. 1 or 2 tweaks to the entry list that we'll get to in a second, but all the work that we've had coming up to this point, these are the drivers that are racing tonight. It's been, even though it's been quite a fun series, it's still been hard work for some of them, but at the end, we've had some fantastic, entertaining, 5 very entertaining races so far, and I've no doubt with a circuit like this, number 6, the grand final, is going to be just as good, if not hopefully top them all.
Yeah, absolutely. Good evening, everybody. And yeah, it's been a really good season with some really good storylines as well, with drivers just missing out on the qualifying positions through the earlier rounds. People like Paul Ferniehoff and Mark Bennett and people like that, and did make it through in that sort of last gasp final chance saloon race. As you can see, though, on the entry list, we haven't got any Guy Crawford and we haven't got Mark Bennett here tonight. So even though he qualified, unfortunately, he's not able to make this grand final race. So instead, we have got the next 2 up in that last chance qualifier. We've got Emil Jaselinks and we've got Steve Arnell joining us for the ride, and well-deserved places they are too. They've been some great performers on the serve throughout the season.
So let's just remind everyone of how we got here then. So we had 4 races, of course, going through the season, starting almost for like ages ago, but back on the 24th of November, Brands Hatch Grand Prix circuit for the first qualification race, and that was won by David Rowe with Roy Rossetti and Steve McMaster rounding out the top 3. Then we had the second race, which was Zolder, where we had Christian Zaruta picking up his first of 2 wins throughout the series, and he finished ahead of Will Rossetti, who was second again, and also Jensen Hassler, a very impressive debutant. He said he's someone who's not bad, and not bad. Pace isn't bad for somebody who's a bit older, or worse to that effect. Then we went across to Estoril, where we had James Murphy make his first appearance and win in dominant fashion. Zaruta was second and Hassler third. Then we went to Zandvoort for the final qualification race on the brand new 2020 spec Grand Prix layout. Christian Zaruta taking his second win. David Rowe back on the grid in second, and Jensen Hassler with his third podium. Their third place in as many races. And then we had the last chance saloon race that came up, and Jaroslav Czerny, who was one of our 2 champions for season 2, decided to pop up last minute and put in a fairly commanding display in the 420R, and he won it ahead of both Tom Willis and Paul Ferniehoff, and they were 3 of 6 drivers that qualified to make up the last few spots on the grid for tonight. And it all comes down to this then, the Nürburgring Grand Prix circuit, which is nestled in the Eiffel Mountains of Germany. It's 3.199 miles, and it certainly has been the site of some fantastic battles, not just in Formula 1, but many motorsport occasions. And in the sim racing world, at least, tonight is going to be another addition into that. We are currently into qualifying at the moment with just 2.5 minutes to go, and it's James Murphy, Superman himself, who's currently on provisional pole by almost 0.2 of a second. But as we saw in practice, in fact, we thought it was close in practice, Chris, when we were looking beforehand when we came on air. The top 10 was separated by just under half a second. We had a look at the qualifying spread. Almost the entire field is covered by just under a second. The entire field, in fact, all 18 cars, only covered by 1.3 seconds. And that just shows, I think, not only have we got the fastest of the fastest out there, but at the same time, tonight probably is going to be potentially the most competitive race we've had in the season. It had all season in this series.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to this. It's the best drivers that we've come up with throughout this season. The fastest, most competitive drivers. Interesting that a lot of the podiums for those races, the winners sort of ran away with it, and so it's good to see them all back on one server, all at one time. Yes, there's absolutely just one race to decide who gets honours in this champions for season 3. And James Murphy has been setting the pace and has set a blistering 17.5. I've not seen that matched elsewhere, but it feels like Will Rossetti is really doing a sort of sneaky one there, only 0.2 back, in an equally impressive time. We've kind of anything in the 17.7s was what we were seeing previously as the fastest. So the fact that James has now moved that another 10th backwards, that's a great performance. Will Rossetti shoving it in there with Sharuta, Hassler and Buchan. Buchan making a great performance there ahead of David Rowe. Currently with only 1 minute to go, I'm sure David would want to be starting higher up than this.
Certainly would do as they come across the line. He's going to wind himself up for possibly one more lap with just under a minute to go. And Will Rossetti is in fact the man that's directly in front of him on track at the moment.
Will Rossetti just 4/100ths of a second there back from Murphy, so he just missed out on that pole. And another spectacular lap as we'll just follow David Rowe maybe here on this last lap. He's a bit caught up behind James Wingfield here though, so potentially this isn't going to be the best lap. He might get a tow, but equally if James makes a mistake or is slightly slower through the middle of a corner, it's going to cost Dave time.
Paul Fernhoff's just popped up to 6th quickest. That means now currently still incredibly, apart from Tom McEwing, the top 17 cars out of 18 covered by just over a second, 1.064 seconds. And that, I have to admit, is one of the closest qualifying spreads I've seen in any caterhamracer.com qualifying session to date across the 3 seasons that we've had. Both the original season, the point scoring season 2 and this Winter Euro Series. It's incredibly close between everyone at this point. And it's on a circuit where overtaking spots are arguably few and far between. This is technically one of them. Dunlop curve, you can line up the car correct. But it is a circuit where it's fast and it's flowing, but it's also it's not the widest circuit either. So if you want to make a pass, there are opportunities, but they are few and far between. And it's one of those circuits where if you are going to make a move, you have to be absolutely certain to commit to it that you're in the right to make it. Otherwise, you might find yourself getting race compromised, and not just yourself compromised, but anyone else that you're fighting with too behind or in front of you.
Yeah, there is a chance tonight that the winner could scamper off into the lead. We hope that doesn't happen, but any side-by-side action in the pack behind, and it can lead the opportunity to break away, which is why it's so important for people like David Rowe and the front runners to be at the front of this grid so they're in the best positions possible to actually take that opportunity if it does arise.
Clock has hit 0, but anyone who's still on a lap is allowed to finish it. And I'm not quite sure if David Rowe is going to have enough to be able to improve on that lap time. Being stuck behind James Wingfield early in the lap may have compromised it enough. Sure that he doesn't go any quicker. You might get a small tow out of the final corner. He's got 2 minutes 17.5 to beat. And will the tow from Wingfield possibly help him as he heads towards the line? Currently sat at the moment down in 7th on the grid. It comes across the line and cannot improve. It's a 2:18.2, which you might think isn't a bad time, but then you look at the spread of the cars, and if that was his best time, it would have put him back down at about 16th. So incredibly close to see how close everyone is. If you look at the top 15, in fact, covered by 6.5 tenths. So we talk about the gaps quite a lot, but seeing them that close, it is very much Caterham-esque if you look at real life Caterham racing, particularly on circuits like Snetterton or ones with long straights. You tend to see very close qualifying results indeed. So the grid is now set for the final 25-minute race of this Caterham Winter Euro Series, caterhamracer.com Winter Euro Series, and it is James Murphy, Superman, starting from pole position. He's only quickest to by just under half a tenth from Will Rossetti on the front row of the grid. Scottish sim racer Martin Buchan is 3rd, alongside him is Christian Zaruta. Another impressive showing over a single lap from Jensen Hassler puts him on the 3rd row of the grid, alongside Paul Fernhoff. David Rowe, as you saw, couldn't improve from 4th, but then he gets very close very tight as you see the margins here getting smaller and smaller. In fact, look at that, the gap between 7th and 8th, 1,000th of a second between Dave Rowe and a much improved Steve Arnell. He carries on improving, and he will start in 8th on the grid. Then it's Jaroslav Cherny 9th, Richard Gallagher rounds out the top 10. 7th place, one of our 2 replacement drivers being, again, which is setting on the grid tonight. Steve Arnell was the other one. Steve McMaster starts alongside him on the 6th row. Blair McConaughey a bit further back than he would like to be. On the 7th row alongside James Wingfield. Tom Willis, who was one of this year's, as it's still been 2020, one of this year's Caterham champions in road sport, starting 15th alongside Andy Parker. And then James Fowler and one of next year's Academy drivers, Tom McEwing, is starting an 18th.
Ooh, Scott, you might have cut out again on us for then, but we will keep an eye out. I'll look for you coming back into the commentary room. But James Murphy there, yeah, great time, a 17.5, repeating what he did in the practice session there as we are just about to get ready for the grid. So Scott, have you got us back in the commentary box? Okay. This is a new one for me. So we've lost Scott. He did have some Wi-Fi problems before the race started. So I think at the moment we'll just wait to see whether he can rejoin onto the stream as the drivers are setting up for their the race of this evening. James Murphy in the perfect position there alongside Will Rossetti on the front row. Martin Buchan putting in a great lap to put himself third ahead of Christian Scheruter, and Jensen Hassler there in fifth place. So the new people onto the server this season, Hassler and Buchan really doing some good performances, showing themselves up there. Paul Fernhoff putting in a great performance as well to see himself in that top six, with Arnell in eighth. David Rowe a bit further down, as we said, than we might expect, but he's had a little less practice this time with Christmas and everything, all the celebrations in between. And then Cherney down in ninth, which is a lot lower than we might expect to see him. However, we know Yaroslav is a fantastic racer, and therefore he, we can expect to see him moving up from that position there. You wouldn't expect to see him finishing this race in ninth place. The rest of the field kind of as expected. Blair McConaughey back to sort of starting a little bit further back in the field, which is where he sometimes does. We sort of end up seeing him, but he's a good racer, and we'll watch for his progress as well as the lights come up and we get ready to start this final race of the season, the grand final of the Winter Euro Series, and the lights go out now and the race is underway. So a nice clean start from everyone there coming down into this turn one. Turn one is one of the tightest bends in motorsport. It's often the scenes of some interesting scrapes, and it's so easy to lock a wheel up, and therefore we hope that doesn't happen now. But as we see, James Murphy has got a nice little gap. Everyone else is spreading themselves out across the road. Doesn't look like anyone's locked up, and so far no contact into turn one. So great as we turn into turn two. I think I heard Scott join us back in the commentary box.
You did. Sorry, my connection is not being very friendly with me tonight, so apologies when you drop in and out. I'll do my best as I can, and I appreciate Chris covering the start for me in that sense. You've done a good job in that one watching through. One thing I noticed as I was caught at the beginning of that start, just as it was happening, is that it's a very clean first few corners, but that's probably famous last words now, as we see James Murphy make his way out of the Mercedes arena and up towards the Valvoline corner for the first time. And so it's Murphy in the lead, Rossetti holding on second place, but for how much longer? Because Christian Scheruter, two-time winner in this Euro Series sequence with a couple of heat wins, now trying to prize the position away from Will Rossetti as they come out of what is now a forward curve and down the hill towards Dunlop, and they're still side by side for second place. And also getting involved now is Jensen Hassler. He's now on the inside of Martin Buchan as they head down towards Dunlop curve, this long arcing 180-degree turn. And now looks like I think Scheruter's trying to go around the outside. There's a bit of wheel-to-wheel bumping. Running wide over the curb goes Scheruter, and now he's under threat from both Hassler and Buchan as they head up towards the Michael Schumacher race. It's a very fast S-bend, but it's very narrow, and you have to pick your line carefully, get offline, or make the wrong move at the wrong moment, and you could find yourself in trouble. And Christian Scheruter is in all sorts of trouble as he puts two wheels onto the grass. Now he's under threat from Paul Fernhoff, as we see in front of them. Will Rossetti is now under threat, is now up the inside, defending from Fernhoff goes Scheruter, almost into the back of Jensen Hassler. Meanwhile, Martin Buchan is trying to go around the outside, and he's taking a crack at Will Rossetti this time. James Murphy, though, meanwhile, Chris might be laughing in his helmet watching all this. He's now trying to charge away, and it's exactly happening what you said was going to happen. One driver getting away whilst everyone else is scrapping amongst each other. I'm going to look through my hands here, Chris, because anyone's going to be second, and they all want to be down towards the chicane. Yeah, absolutely. Side by side is never quick, as Christian's wilied his way back up through all those mistakes. That actually does end up taking that place, as we see a little bit of contact there between Buchan and Will Rossetti. Overall, Christian somehow, after all of those antics, has made himself out in front into second place. But fatally, that has let James Murphy get away. And we've seen the pace that James has carried through the early practice and through qualifying. These guys have really got to work together now if they want to take this championship crown. Look at the advantage. It's 3.5 seconds already for James Murphy. He's not even in the shot. There he is. Just the orange roll cage just floating on the bottom of the screen. There's a big lock up from Jensen Hassler going around the outside of Martin Buchan. Rossetti's holding on to second out of the turn one hairpin into that Mercedes arena section where you go left, and then right again. This is where the main battle, I feel, is going to be between Scheruter, Rossetti, Hassler, Buchan, David Rose in there as well. Also, so is Steve Arnell running very well up in 7th place. And Jaroslav Cherney, who won the last chance saloon race at Barcelona, only back in 8th, and he's one of the drivers who enjoys these 420R machines. Not quite on the same pace. I think what these guys have to realise, Chris, is that it's a saying I've said so many times, and it's absolutely true here. The harder this group fights each other, the easier it is for Murphy to keep on making a break. And there has to be a moment here where one of them has to kind of subconsciously say, look, guys, if we keep on battling, none of us are going to be with a shout to possibly try and take this race one away from James. We have to start trying to work together somehow. Otherwise, the best we can hope for is second place. But that said, I'm not sure Martin Buchan's listening. Sorry, Jensen Haas is listening as he makes a dive up the inside over Rossetti's Dunlop curve. Rossetti runs a little wide. He's down to 4th. But now, ultimately, Zarus is going to be the one that leads the pack here. He's going to be the one that leads the charge and says, come on, boys, we need to work together here and catch him up. We've got 21 minutes to go. The gap is 4 seconds. It's not impossible to catch him, but they have to work together now. Otherwise, all the work they're going to try and do later will be for nothing.
Yeah, absolutely. That is exactly what should be going through their heads right now if they want to take that championship crown. But I'm not sure we've seen anyone that has got James's pace. So they're going to struggle with that as well. But nevertheless, I've said earlier as well that how difficult this track is and how easy it is to lose the back end of this. It's easy for it to oversteer moment as we see Hassler there pulling outside, trying to get past Christian, but doesn't actually make it happen. But it's easy to get the rear end of these cars out of shape on this track in particular, and mistake will cost you a lot of time again as we see Hassler there hounding the back of Christian's car, again making Christian go defensive and again losing them time. So as he sneaks it up the inside of the final corner there and looks like he might well make that stick into turn 1.
Asta made a dive up the inside at the chicane. When it didn't happen, all she saw Rossetti trying to make a move himself, and this lead gap is now extending to almost 5 seconds as another new fast lap of the race gets punched in by Murphy, and it's now 4 of them all together down towards the turn 1 hairpin. They're all going to break together. Hassler takes the wide approach as he goes through the right hand up towards the Mercedes arena, and it looks like Zaruta will lose out 1 position. He might lose 2, he might lose 3 if he can't get himself back on the racing line and try and attack here on the run down towards the second part of the Mercedes arena. He's back up the inside. Hassler throws the block into the second part of the arena section. And Hassler getting very defensive. He's up to P2 now. Has been in these situations before when he's been strong in the beginning of the race, but either because he just lost pace or got distracted or just race fatigue or whatever it is, he just loses pace towards the second half of the race. Hopefully he's worked on that, because as we've seen in the past couple of races, first couple of laps in the race where he's been up towards the front, he's been very strong. But when it gets towards the end, for whatever reason, he just seems to lose pace and lose consistency and starts to fall backwards through the top 5 and the top 10. So hopefully this time is the exception, Chris, and he's learnt from any mistakes that he made in the last few races.
Let's hope so. I think we might be seeing a battle for second of the championship if we can potentially disregard James until the last lap at this point, unless he makes that mistake. But certainly behind, if you look, Cherney has made another place up past Steve Arnell into 7th place. So you can start playing that Jaws music now, because you're pretty certain to see him starting to make his way through this pack as he finds that pace, and as we sort of progress through this race. We've still got 18 minutes to go, so there's still plenty of time for him to make space, and the next victim on his list will be David Rowe.
Yeah, Jaroslav Cherney's Caterham red, just like the blood that he smells in the water with all the cars in front, being 7th place. His next target's going to be David Rowe, and those two have had plenty of back and forth battles in the 420R machines. This is the onboard cameo from Martin Buchan, one of our Scottish predominantly sim racer drivers, who has been a welcome addition to the caterhamracer.com championship. But I'm sure that Will Rossetti wants to try and put one on him if he can. Rossetti darts out, makes a light dive up the inside into the NGK chicane. They make contact and bump wheels. Rossetti, I think, not only does he lose traction, but he had to kind of back off anyway. As a result of that, he also gives both David Rowe and potentially Jaroslav Cherney a free pass into the hairpin. He's getting assaulted from either side now. David Rowe has got past of them to get into 4th position. Cherney's up to 5th now, and also Steve Barnell's not out of this too. He's on the back of them, and it all started from that dive from Rossetti up at the NGK chicane. That's what's kicked off this sequence, and now they come down towards 5 of them together into the hairpin. Cherney now on the back of David Rowe, but Rowe goes very defensive on the inside line. Buchan tries to stick it round the outside to repass Cherney for what would be 5th position. Out of the Mercedes arena, or into the Mercedes arena they'll go. It's now Rossetti who's been shuffled all the way down to 7th place, with Barnell behind him in 8th. But it's incredible how one move, Chris, can be a major catalyst change the entire complexion of this battle between these 5 cars.
Yeah, I didn't expect Cherney to get through everyone that quickly, but there you go. It happened quicker than I expected. It looked like with Will Rossetti's move that he just braked a little bit later and wasn't expecting Buchan to brake at that point, and kind of had to make the move by default, and then the contact happens midway through a chicane, and if someone's carrying a little bit too much speed, we see Buchan there back up the inside of Rossetti. But Cherney, yeah, absolutely hounding now, back up in 5th place. So he started in 8th or 9th, I think, so back in 5th now, really putting the pressure on. As we see up ahead, Christian Saluta and Jensen Hassler have still not finished their battle. They're still going as Christian Shooter drifts onto the grass. That could be fatal in that one, although he's managed to drag it back to the tarmac, and off he goes up the hill towards the Schumacher S.
Yeah, Christian Zerita, he outbraked himself. They're just trying to defend from Hassler. He came up towards Dunlop curve and couldn't quite make it stick. But now what's interesting is that those two have broken away, but that little sort of duet that was battling over second place has broken up, and Murphy's gap for the record is still 6.4, 6.
We're losing Scott again, I think. So as we see Cherney now, again, closely following David Rowe, absolutely hounding, just does not want to sit in that 5th place. He wants to get up the road and maybe towards Christian Chiruta there ahead. As he's got a great run coming out up into this. Is a great move. He's up the inside of the little kink, coming up into the chicane at the top of the hill. Never going to make it around the outside there, but he still has an opportunity to make a run up the final corner. You can see that he's trying, but David Rowe does cover him off. Just does the slight movement of the car as well. Rossetti then looks to be an opportunist move, but doesn't make that stick either. So this battle is absolutely frenetic in this for 4th, 5th, 6th and 7th. And James Wingfield there is not far off the back of this. They've all kind of drifted backwards as the mid-pack have sort of settled down. As see Rossetti, Kearney and David Rowe all fanning across the road there with Buchan and Arnell just there ready to pick up the pieces. David Rowe late on the brakes there. Cherney's locked up, sliding the car, manages to avoid contact. Great move there into turn 1. But David Rowe holds on to that position, but only by the skin of his teeth. He'll be looking for that podium position, hopefully, if anyone ahead does make that mistake. James Murphy has now pulled out to a 7-second lead out front. Christian Chiruta is a second behind Jensen Hasse. So all that has kind of settled itself down. We'll see whether Chiruta can make a move back for that top or 2nd place or 3rd place. But David Rowe has now got a little bit of breathing space against Cherney, who's having to now defend from Rossetti behind him. And this pack just doesn't look like it's relenting. I'm just going to give Scott a chance to see whether he is back in the commentary room.
I am indeed. Yeah, again, you have to forgive my internet connection be dropping out again. It's been smooth all these past few weeks. Now decides right tonight, the grand final of all leaving to start playing games. But yeah, we'll press on regardless. And I appreciate Chris for filling in the times when I've been having to quickly try and reconnect. So heading out of the Dunlop curve now, see Martin Buchan ahead of Will Rossetti. So a little bit of a shuffle around by the looks of it, but not too much. But in terms of behind 3rd and 4th, as Murphy now continues to lead by 6.6 seconds. So gap has stabilised a little bit, but this is the main fight that we see here towards the left-hander under brakes and little sort of complex of left and right, and Buchan's over the curve, but he holds on to 6th position. Steve Arnell fancies to look at 7th place on Arnell, and also look at the cars behind trying to close in. We've got James Wingfield and Emil Jaselics, the Belgian, and Blair McConaughey's not too far away either. There they go, heading up towards the NGK chicane at the top of the hill. Coming up now, we've just gone past half distance, coming up to half distance in this race, 25 minutes, and I don't want to be too sort of kind of declaring that this race is pretty much, it's not in the bag just yet, but Murphy at the moment looking pretty comfortable. You see Wingfield and Jaselics all over each other as they make a battle here, but it looks as though James Murphy has this race firmly in control, and touch wood, if anything major happens to him, I can't see him losing it anytime soon. No,
6-7 seconds is a very comfortable lead. He did have a sort of nearly 7 seconds. It's dropped back down to 6.3 at the moment, so it is varying a little bit, but that's nothing I think that to be concerned about. As much as anything, James has, again, like we said, previous broadcasts, has got to battle himself to see whether, again, Rossetti diving down the inside there. Rossetti does seem to like the last of the late breakers, doesn't he, and seems to be making it stick most of the time, and Buchan seems to be the person that's always on the receiving end for that.
I think, if anything else, they're definitely having fun out there between each other, having a battle. Paul Fernhoff is in the pits for one reason or another, unfortunately, so he's now dropped down after quite an impressive qualifying session, but he won't be able to end the Winter Euro Series on a high because of his issues, whatever they may be. Hassler, meanwhile, has managed to pull out a gap of almost over a second now on Christian's route, which is incredibly impressive for him. But we'll have to get a little love tap there from Martin Buchan, saying, I haven't disappeared just yet, I'm still here. Don't forget about me just yet. He gives him a little tap on the exit of forward corner. Calls it Morse code in the back rather than a friendly tap. We used to give him that when he nudges in the rear before he heads down towards Dunlop curve. I think Martin's making a point here that he wants to try and make a move here, but Rossetti's pretty steadfast in this position, in 6th position here as he comes through Dunlop curve. look like he was going to try and give it up any easy anytime soon, as he hasn't done over the last few laps.
Yeah, I don't think so. And equally, we saw that Rossetti was second on the grid, so we know he's got that pace in that car. If only he could stop having to defend and tuck in on all these corners, but that's not going to happen now. We're far enough into this race that it doesn't matter anymore. This has got personal, and I think really Martin really wants to make a move here. But Rossetti doing all his, getting all of his racing knowledge out there, and the moment is holding that place, and maybe looking to try and catch up with Cherney again. But again, it's not looking likely at this point. With now 11 minutes to go, it's going to take mistakes out front, I think.
Speaking of that front, I'll just keep an eye on the timing pylon. That lead gap has come down from 6.6 down to 5.7. So unless Murphy's just taking it a little bit easier and not pushing as hard because he knows he's got a comfortable lead, either that or Jensen Hassler really is that quick out there, and he's actually starting to reel him in. And also Jensen Hassler is just about bringing Christian's Reuter with him. The gap is about 1.1 seconds till they come across the line. Then the gaggle that comes past the pits behind them, and the closest one appears to be David Rowe versus Jaroslav Cherney, and that's over 4th place. And how many times have we seen those two battle amongst each other for position? Rowe now, does he go defensive or take the traditional racing line? It's the traditional racing line into the hairpin. Meanwhile, Steve Arnell fancies to go at Martin Buchan behind. He has got through. Yes, he has. So dive up the inside into the turn 1 hairpin. As a result of Steve Arnell making a pass for 7th place. Rossetti will be his next target, but Buchan will try and get him back here as they come towards the second part of the Mercedes arena. This whole section where they turn left and then left and right again. It's all one part of one section here, the Mercedes arena. Oh, a little tap there from Buchan. He does like his love taps, doesn't he? He's given a few to Rossetti. Now thinks, right, you can try one on for size, Steve. He certainly likes letting people know he's there, doesn't he?
Yeah, it's great to see Steve Arnell here up in 7th place. He had some technical issues in our last chance saloon, and where we thought he was odds-on favourite for a solid qualifying spot, he finished just outside the qualifiers. But as it happens, he has made it onto the grid by way of other people not being able to make it tonight. But it's great to see him here putting in a good performance and up in 7th place.
Yeah, it's one of his better performances that we've seen from him recently, I have to agree. And definitely a good job, although possibly just cursed it through the top corner. It's the classic commentator's curse. I spoke too soon. Well, so did we both talked about him. But either way, Martin Buchan says thank you very much. And back into 7th place he goes at the expense of Steve Arnell. But Steve will try and get him back if he comes to the S's. Just further back here towards the bottom of the top 10. Some more good battles going on here. We've got McConaughey in the white car, James Wingfield and Emil Juselic, the Belgian, in the sort of Caterham / Team Lotus colours on that car. Once again, looking at the front, there's 9 minutes to go, but that lead gap has come down again. It's come down to 5.2. So, unless the only thing I can suspect is that Murphy is just backing off a little bit because he doesn't feel he has to push as hard because he's built up enough for buffer and enough for cushion, and he's just backing off enough so that by the time he gets to the flag, even though Jensen might be much closer, he's not going to be in a position where he's going to be anywhere near a chance to make a threat. As Juselic stood on the anchors there and just lit up the front tyres as they pretty much just locked solid, trying to make sure we didn't hit the back of James Wingfield. That was some extremely late braking. As we're going back to the front with James Murphy and Jensen Hassler, the gap is 5.1 seconds, and I'd imagine that will get smaller, but by the time we get to the flag, it'll be still comfortable enough for Murphy to cross the line and win the race, touch wood, provided nothing happens, again, touch wood, within the next 8.5 minutes.
The only scenario that I'd like to put out there, and I think it's an unlikely one given that we haven't seen him lose swathes of time, is that if James has picked up some damage, maybe he hit a curb too hard, maybe he drifted off and tapped a barrier, he could have some damage on our cars, which we're running this season, and that could be affecting his performance very slightly. But I think we would have seen more of a jump in the time than the just gentle decline as we're seeing it now. I think maybe the likely scenario is that he is just managing this situation currently.
Yeah, he's an experienced catering champion in real life himself, and hasn't won a caterhamracer.com title, so to speak, in many cases. He missed out on both of the caterhamracer.com championship titles in season 2. Hopefully try and round off by picking up some kind of consolation to end 2020. This is the onboard shot from him, we're just saying, just working away on the wheel of the 420R. Now you can see the gap has gone and the lead back out to roughly about 5.4. So I think that Murphy is just simply managing that gap enough to ensure that he's got this race relatively in the bag, but we've still got just under 7.5 minutes to go. So it's by no means certain or over yet. Trying to keep that cushion nice and comfortable so that if he does make a small mistake, he's got maybe just about enough to give him a saving grace. Through the Schumacher-S goes the battle for 10th and 11th. James Wingfield still being chased down by Emil Juselic. And this is now the onboard shot, and Next lining him up for a move and makes a late dive up the inside of Wingfield, sees him coming, has to give him the room. Does just slot in behind the Belgian right-hander and tries to get the undercut as he comes out of the right-hander down towards the sprint towards the King Ad Van Bogen, so out through Warsteiner curve. Ad Van Bogen, very fast, flat-out right-handed kink. It's corner, or it's not really a kink, it's a corner, but nonetheless, it's fast enough for James Wingfield to get a run here down towards the NGK chicane. To make the switch back, he does go side by side in the second part. It's a very classy move if he can pull it off. Now, the traction here towards the Coca-Cola curve will be all important. The outside line in towards the last corner to end another lap. Just about enough here for Settings to hold on in front of Wingfield. A little twitch of oversteer there from James, but still got a strong enough run off the final corner to the sprint down towards the Elkargen, which is something I learned today, is the name of the hairpin. I'm guessing because it's the Mercedes Arena, it might be named after Norbert Haug, but either way, that's the name of the first corner hairpin. That's a today I learned fact. Now to the Mercedes Arena they go.
You can see that, a little bit of nudge there from Giselink's on the rear end of Wingfield's car. So another little love tap, as we said, but great racing by these two to go side by side through the chicane, the tight chicane at the end of the lap. Really almost unheard of, I'd say, to take two cars through there and come out facing the same way. But they did do that for sure. We see McConaughey here. Remember, McConaughey started back in 16th maybe or something like that. So he has made some good progress through as well. So it's worth highlighting that. This is the closest battle on the track so far. And you can see that it's now being joined by Gallagher behind. He's sort of catching up in the Will Smith 420R machine there. So as these two have been battling and going side by side, he has managed to make bridge the gap back to here. But the rest of the field at the moment look like they're spreading themselves out quite nicely.
Yeah, and key of which is what you said, it gets wide on the exit of Schumacher S. We'll go back to what's going on in front of the second, because Gallagher fancies going around the outside. This is Christian Zaruta.
Did I just cut Gallagher off? Sorry.
just sort of, that was we see here Gallagher. He is still side by side with Giselic. He's going to go around the outside at the Michelin curve, but if he can get to the inside line and hold the line here towards Warsteiner, he can get through, and he has done that. Another sprint out of Warsteiner towards Ad Van Bogen, but this will now be Hunter becomes hunted, because this is now Giselic's chance to tuck into the slipstream and takes the outside run through Ad Van Bogen. Gallagher's wheels are all up on the curb as they came down towards up the hill towards NGK chicane, but it's going to be Giselic with the inside line. It breaks a little bit later, and the aerial camera shows us that it's going to be Giselic in front. And as we now see them come back down towards the hairpin, the final corner of the Coca-Cola corner is a very, very long, almost never-ending right-hander, but you come back onto the pit straight. Giselic puts two wheels onto the grass, and this will give momentum back to Gallagher as they come down towards the pit straight. We're on board with Richard. Sprint down towards the Haughagen hairpin, the first corner of this fantastic Grand Prix circuit of the Nürburgring, and they're going to be side by side again. Gallagher has track position. In the background there is 2021 Academy racer Tom McEwen getting a bit of a chance to see what racecraft and his Caterham is like up close. Giselic just appears back on the apex as he comes into this first part of the arena section. They're both sideways on the exit. They come back down towards the second part. Now, just in front of them, we see there Martin Buchan kick off here between himself and Will Rossetti. He's going up the inside into the Valvoline corner. Rossetti gives him the space, but he knows if he can stay there, he'll be on the inside for Ford. And through the right-hander, which starts to plunge downhill towards Dunlop curve. This is a corner where you do break in a straight line, but the circuit kind of curves away before heading 180 degrees up the other direction. And again under brakes, Buchan very strong to defend that position. Hasn't got long, just 2 3/4 minutes to go in this caterhamracer.com Winter Euro Series Grand Final. Through the Schumacher S they go, and Buchan holding his own now in 6th position, but Rossetti, who started on the front row, Chris, I imagine, still looking pretty hungry and still looking for a chance to possibly break into not necessarily the top 5, but the top 6 at least, to end the Winter Euro Series on something of a high.
Yeah, we've seen it before. He has incredible one-lap pace. Just sometimes in the races, it's about keeping it that consistency and racing around others and not getting too tangled up in the issues and sort of shenanigans that go on. First use of shenanigans tonight. That's quite late in our broadcast. I quite like that. But he's still got an opportunity up here. Outside of this chicane is not the best place, but nevertheless, we've seen it almost work with James Wingfield. But I think Will Rossetti is going to push himself behind the car and just look for the run out of the corner instead. Oh, as he loses the rear end, just holds on to it. There's some great car control to grab that one from spinning out.
It won't be contention for still getting past, making moves like that. It almost looked like he kind of just got a little bit too aggressive and just stood on the accelerator pedal, and the back end just couldn't cope with how much power he was trying to put through the rear wheels at that time. It's now going to be, let's look at the gaps. Is he just inside the half second he needs? I think he is, just about. Will he be close enough to make a dive? We've seen him do it before, and instead of a chain reaction before, he's learnt his lesson this time. He knows that you can sort of go defensive. He tries the outside line. Let's see where he goes into the Mercedes arena. Out of the Howard Harkin hairpin. And into the first part of the Mercedes arena. Through a left-hander. Can he get any closer? Little tiny drift there as he comes up into the second part. You can see how hard he's trying to push on the limit. Through the last parts to come through. And he looks up the inside. The Miley Martin is still there. He might get another chance possibly into either Valvoline or Ford. Can't do it there. You might have to try and set him up through the next two corners to make a dive possibly at the Dunlop corner. That could be one of his better opportunities. And I think also, look at the timer, it may or may not be, Chris, on the last lap of the race, because this is our race leader. I was going to use the David Addison phrase, meanwhile back at the ranch, because in 5.5 seconds up to the good, and all due respect, James, we haven't really had much need to talk about you because you've been up at the front and dominating as he normally does. And by the looks of things, with 30 seconds to go, he looks like we're on the last lap of the race. If that's the case, we're about half a lap away from seeing James Murphy doing something he hasn't done yet in this race, but he has come close a couple of times before, and that is pick up a caterhamracer.com title. It might not be for points or anything, but certainly it'll be bragging rights for him in the Winter Euro Series. Again, since he popped up at the fourth round, I think it was Estorelli popped up at, yes, and won that race. He's pretty much proved his worth all the way through from start to finish.
Yeah, absolutely. We've seen some devastating pace from him in this this winter series. Whenever he's come on, he's absolutely looked the class of the field. So when the points do start kicking in next year, I'm sure he's looking in really good shape for that as he makes his way tidily through that last chicane and into that last final corner. I'm sure he'll be dead chuffed to be calling himself the Winter Euro Series Season 3 on caterhamracer.com.
And have won a title in real life or in Season 2 at least on points, but he can take something away from 2020 in a Caterham. James Murphy weaves with delight, and no surprise, he is the caterhamracer.com Winter Euro Series champion. He has done it in fine style after winning his heats, celebrating with a bit of a wheel lock up at the same time, and steady on. I think he's posted for photos for a second now. Second place goes to Jensen Hassler. A fantastic drive for Jensen. Well done for him. Ever since he popped up at the second race at Zolder, he's been absolutely superb from start to finish. Third goes to Christian Zaruta, and a well-deserved podium. Fourth goes to David Rowe, and fifth to Jaroslav Cheney. Two drivers that had a bit of a silent race, but still up there in the top five. Martin Buchan finishes sixth. He wins the battle between himself and Will Rossetti. Steve Arnell should be very happy with eighth place. A very strong performance. He's been a driver that's consistently gotten quicker and quicker throughout the series. Ninth to Blair McConaughey. 10th to James Wingfield to round out the top 10. Then it's Richard Gallagher, Tom McEwing, Steve McMaster, and Emil Gisellings rounding out the next few drivers. Take you through the official result then. So there it is at the top of the screen. James Murphy is the caterhamracer.com Winter Euro Series champion, and he wins in fairly commanding fashion. At one point he was ahead by almost 7 seconds, but he wins in the end by 5.2. Jensen Hassler, incredible stuff. He only just joined the server pretty much back at the second heat at Zolder, but ever since then he's been one of the quickest drivers out there consistently throughout the races he's competed in, and certainly one to watch for the next point scoring championship. Christian Zaruta, we know how quick he is, and that's a well-deserved third for him. He did well to try and hold on. Was only 1.2 seconds away from grabbing second place. David Rose should be happy with fourth. Jaroslav Cherney, who won the last chance Celine race, can only manage a top 5 finish, but good efforts from both of them to get as high as they did. Martin Buchan, again, one of his first proper tries in caterhamracer.com. He finishes a very respectable 6th, ahead of Will Rossetti in 7th. Steve Arnell is 8th, and Blair McConaughey and James Wingfield round out the top 10. 11th place goes to Richard Gallagher. 12th for Tom McEwing. To Steve McMaster. Emma Gisellings looks like he dropped down outside the top 10 in the last few laps, outside of our camera shot. He finishes a lowly 14th. Then Andy Parker, Paul Willis, and James Fowler, and Paul Fernerhuff, unfortunately, the only driver that didn't see the flag as he pitted early on. That is our third racing season effectively done and dusted, and incredibly some fantastic racing back and forth up and down the field, including those battling for second place. But in the end, Chris, there was one man that nobody could catch, and in the end it was Superman himself putting on a super performance, pardon the pun, was James Murphy. And we know how quick he is in real life, we know how quick he is in the sim. Both times when you put him on a car where he feels good, the car feels good, and everything feels as it should do, genuinely, in both scenarios, there really is no stopping him. And tonight was a textbook example of that and how quick he really is.
He did exactly what he needed to do, didn't he? He got on pole position by a good margin. Will Rossetti did look like he was going to challenge for that, but didn't quite make it stick. And as soon as he got off those lights, he just basically did what he needed to do, which was stay out of trouble, stay in front, and he pulled that nice strong lead behind. All heck broke loose, didn't it? And that kind of helped his cause in that respect. But nevertheless, he didn't make any mistakes, and off he went into the distance. What more could you want? He's been a great driver, as I said, some devastating speed, and definitely a worthy champion.
Absolutely. And we look at the guys that finished second and third on the podium with him. I mean, Jensen Hassler, I think if you had to pick, a most improved driver, or arguably like a best sort of, to use a polite term, I use it in a polite sense, the best rookie driver of the drivers that we've seen appear for the first time. And there've only been a handful that have joined us for the first time in terms of racing. Arguably, Jensen has been the best new driver that we've had all season. I mean, ever since he joined at Zolder, he was someone who initially took the fight to the likes of Christian Zaruta and was able to keep with him, and then just lost pace a little bit. But there was something about this race, whether it was just a bit more practice, whether it was just a bit more time on track, or a bit more time getting used to the car, or everything he'd learned over the last couple of races, where he just sat back and assessed what he had done and what hadn't worked. Jensen was able to put in a performance tonight where not only was he second, but he was second by 1.2 seconds to beat the likes of Christian Zaruta, David Rowe, Jaroslav Cherny, Will Rossetti, all these guys that have been doing this for several months now, and he just comes straight in and is someone who is bang immediately on the pace. And while he couldn't catch James tonight, second place he made his own by 1.2 seconds, and it's certainly a position that he deserves. And not only is we said that James Murphy is a road-worthy champion, Jensen Haas is a very worthy runner-up, considering where he was at the beginning of the season, when he only just started racing with us back at Zolder, and that in itself is an incredible achievement.
As we see Christian there, I think we'll try and grab all three of the podium into the commentary box and see whether it works for now. But we can only give it a go and see what happens. So as I grab James Murphy in there as well, so we'll start, and hopefully, Jensen, you've got us in the commentary box.
Hello.
Hey, nice for you to join us. Great performance. I think in that race, you couldn't quite keep up with James Murphy. I think you got sort of stymied by Christian, who we'll speak to in a second, quite early doors on that. But a good race nonetheless.
Yeah, I got a bit lucky at the chicane. Christian said he was 3 wide, and yeah, I got a break there, and I managed to keep concentration for a change.
Absolutely, we saw you hold on through to the end, which it hasn't happened in earlier races, but nevertheless you've comfortably qualified and really did earn your spot tonight, so must be pretty pleased with that. And will you be joining us next year for more of the same?
Yeah, I'm sure I will be. Yeah, I enjoyed that. Thank you very much for organising it.
No problem, and cheers for that. And let's go to Christian, who is evading my camera work here. Christian, I think the decision to go try and go side by side on those early laps kind of cost you there, really.
Yeah, I don't know, but it's fun, isn't it? So it's more fun. I vaguely remember going three or 4 wide into the chicane on the first lap. I don't know what happened there, but yeah.
Somehow you were on the grass going around the Dunlop S's, and by the time you got back to the top of the hill, you were back into second. So that must have been quite some run up the hill there.
Yeah, I've no idea. I can't even remember. All I remember was at the time it felt quite leery.
But couldn't quite hang on to Jensen there, so third place for you. Must be pretty satisfied with that, and like you say, you've had a lot of fun tonight.
Yeah, it was awesome tonight. Actually, just tried to go around the outside into the hairpin, the right-hand hairpin at the bottom of the hill, and just outbrake myself slightly, and just got a touch of the wheel on the grass, and then tried too hard to catch Jensen back up, who was being annoyingly fast and consistent. So yeah, I had about the same pace as him, but it was pretty much stalemate in the last 10 minutes. So but yeah, Jensen drove really well, as did James again, as usual, annoyingly. But no, super fun race tonight, and really enjoyed it.
Thanks, Christian. And we'll go over to James, who again had a whole evening of trying not to make a mistake. We saw him move to a 7-second lead, and then it was back down to 5 at one point. We were wondering, James, if you had a problem or whether you were just managing it and giving us something interesting to talk about.
I was getting very nervous of track limits, and so I saw Jensen pulling up a couple, and I threw in, I think what must have been my fastest lap anyway, just sort of halfway through, just to make sure it's still good, and sort of managed the gap back. But it sounds like I missed out on all the fun. I'm looking forward to watching it back.
You've had a relatively calm night compared to the pack behind. They certainly contributed to your 7-second lead, but nevertheless, we've seen some great pace from you all season, actually, and that must give you confidence going into next season's racing.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, guys, Christian and Jensen already said it, but thank you so much for putting this on. I hope everyone enjoyed watching it. Thanks to the sponsors, DPR Motorsport, FPZERO, Just Add Lightness, Darren, Burke, driver coach, everyone to sort of put this together, because it's I wasn't necessarily even going to make tonight, but I'm sure for a lot of people, lockdown has meant various things, but in one sort of silver lining, it meant I could make the grand final, which I'm really pleased about. And yeah, you guys have certainly put focus on something, as Christian said, is just really fun. So much appreciated. I hope everyone enjoyed it.
Thank you very much, James. Pro as ever. And thanks to both Christian and Jensen there for joining us in the commentary box. And we look forward to seeing you race more of the same in future.
Ciao.
Good evening, guys.
He's poetic, is James Murphy, isn't he? He does like to kind of say something quite poignant. And again, I think he's absolutely right. But I think that I think as much as he praises, yourself, Chris, and obviously my small part that I play in being on the mic, I think that the same praise has to be levelled and given to all the drivers and everyone else who've been supporting and making sure that it can happen, because it's all been good, being here in the commentary box and Chris being here, but also being able to set this all up. But it doesn't happen without those who come and race week in, week out to do it. So I'm sure Chris will no doubt give his own praise, but I guess from a personal point of view, not only am I thankful to Chris for having me involved, particularly throughout what's been, I think it's been an unusual year is the understatement of the year. I think it's been anything but normal. But nonetheless, it's been still entertaining watching not just the initial lockdown series, but then the championship that we had with the two series, the two cars, the Academy and the 420s, and then going to the Winter Euro Series to round things off. And I'm pretty certain that there's a foundation that's been built here for something that's only going to get bigger and stronger and build more momentum with more Caterham racers and hopefully beyond going into 2021. And who knows how many seasons we'll be able to pack in next year. But yeah, it's. I think James says it best amongst everyone else when he kind of mentions that. I know the drivers appreciate it. I know that obviously Chris appreciates everyone giving the support. So it's been an incredible sort of in this aspect of the year. There's not many things that have been incredible this year, but in this aspect of the year, it's been incredible to experience all the racing that everyone's put together amongst people that I'm familiar with in the catering world. And I guess, yeah, I'll just use my chance to say a thank you to Chris, to everyone that's been involved, for at least being and being sort of good enough to have me commentate on it. And it keeps a real world association I have with Caterham in terms of enjoying their racing and commentating on them in real life and doing some writing for them as well. And all I can say is, in this sense at least, I think in many senses, bring on 2021, because I think everyone's just hoping that, one, it's not like 2020, but at the same time, but it's not only is it not like that, but it's more better than we could have imagined. And I can only hope that caterhamracer.com is one of the things that continues getting stronger and stronger. It has already been with new drivers coming in, with all some of the developments going on in the background, with other developments and other little bits and pieces that are being in the works. And I know that Chris is going to work hard over the next few months to ensure that when we get the next series up and running, it's going to be bigger, better, and more popular, and more even better supported than it really has been. And thank you to all the sponsors, of course, and we'll give proper thanks to them in a second, of course, as we end things off. But I guess to round things off, I guess I should give the floor free to the man who's literally without his input and putting it all together, wouldn't be here. We wouldn't have had 3 series. We wouldn't have had all the sponsors that we had. We wouldn't have had caterhamracer.com in the first place in terms of an esports series. So, Chris, I guess as a final sign off, the floor is yours to say everything that you want to say to round off.
Thank you, Scott. I
as
will.
Usual, but I think at the same time very Maybe for the year.
Yeah, absolutely. I will, to wrap things up and to say things before, we're letting drivers do what they love doing, which is race, which is what I loved seeing them do, dead close. And we've managed to recreate something on here, which I think actually represents good Caterham racing. So I encourage everyone in 2021, come along, watch it live as well as keep following us across all these socials. So on Facebook and on YouTube, if you like us, subscribe to us, if you comment on us and talk to us, then it gives us a boost and knows that we know you're out there watching. So please do like, subscribe, follow, and all those nice things to keep this on the air. A big thank you to our sponsors this season and previous seasons, but this season, DPR Motorsport. If you are looking for car servicing, Caterham car servicing in the south of England, so around the Gatwick area, DPR Motorsport are got all the bases covered: track, race, everything they can do. FPZERO Simulators. If you're out there thinking, how do I get involved in this, but I have no idea and I don't really want to get involved in all the faff of having to choose simulators and stuff, so FPZERO Simulators have turnkey solutions. You can literally just purchase, offer you up and running, and they will keep you supported, so you can come and do the same things that you're seeing on stream all the time. And just Add Lightness. If you're a Caterham owner, you know how important it is to be visible out there on the track or out on the roads, and they offer some LED light systems for Caterhams as well as many other accessories, so go and check out Just Add Lightness. But the lights are one of their most popular products, and they look exactly the same as the standard lights, but they offer you much more safety with that and great visibility, the LED effects. And Darren Burke, Performance Driver Coach, Designers Blaze Structures, as ever, thank you very much in the background there as well for your support of the stream. And finally, Scott, thank you for all your efforts this season. It's been brilliant, and all the previous seasons as well. I look forward to working with you again in new seasons.
Likewise, and it's always fun. They do say that we make quite a nice view in the commentary box, and one thing I do want to try and do next year, all things considered, I know there'll be most parts where obviously your plans for next season are you'll be behind the wheel again rather than behind the pit wall, which is a good thing. For those who don't know, just in case those who don't know Chris's background, of course, he's been a Caterham racer for several years. I was proud to see him become the 310R champion back in 2018, and it was something he worked on for several seasons. He took a bit of a break last season and also last year as well, but he's coming back next year in the newly slightly revamped and sort of upgraded Caterham 7 UK Championship. He's got the cars to do it. It's going to be a very competitive season. He's going to be in the top line of Caterham, which means that not just everyone else giving feedback on these cars, because one thing you have to remember as well is the two people we also thank as well, of course, is Bonobros and Jaroslav Cherny, because without them, they wouldn't be making the constant improvements and the skins and everything else that makes these cars better and more refined. And the good thing is that all the feedback and all the input that's been put in from all the drivers that we had over the past 3 seasons, that's all going directly to Jaroslav and Bonobro and everyone else who works on these cars in order to make them as close to the real thing as possible. And all that feedback has gone in. And I know that I'm confident Jaroslav will say that amongst anything, he's incredibly grateful for all the feedback from actual real Caterham drivers who race these cars weekend in, weekend out, to tell them exactly how these cars feel, how they should feel, what needs to tweak, what needs to change. And so we know that next season, cars are going to be even closer to the real thing, particularly, of course, with the modifications to the 420R for the 7 UK Championship, with the slicks, with the uprated suspension and everything else to make them even quicker and even better. And there is some other bits and pieces worked on the background in terms of cars. I think you might have some info on, yes or no, Chris?
I don't have any update yet, so we will find out in the new year.
Right.
It will be part of next year, our plans for next year, basically. So no specific details right now.
But a big thank you to both Jaroslav and Ben for taking all the feedback and input from our drivers and making the cars better and better. And we know that for the next season, they're going to be the best and the most realistic we've had them up to that point. And so now, I guess all that's left for us to kind of say for the last time this year, in fact, not just this season, but this year, is to give a sign off and say once again, as Chris already has, to our sponsors, because the caterhamracer.com Winter Year Series is sponsored by DPR Motorsport, and I will get my sort of little bit of info up that I need to say that properly. Otherwise, would do that if I could. 1 second. Really have this more to hand rather than relying on the memory, because it's always terrible. DPR Motorsport, your competitive advantage, by FPZERO Simulators, providing professional grade simulators for your home and our drivers, and by Just Add Lightness, high performance LED lights and accessories for the Caterham 7. And of course, we're also supported by the Design and Display Structures and Darren Burke, Performance Driver Coach. Do go and seek them out. Do go and check them all out and go and support them if you can. And also for us to say is, for those who've watched and who've supported all throughout the season, thank you very much. We know it's been a difficult 2020. We know it's still going to be a difficult winter going forward in the next few months, but light at the end of the tunnel. And at least we can say now, thankfully, we can put 2020 behind us. The first part of next year is going to be tough in many senses, but we're confident by this time next year, hopefully, this kind of strife will be this in the rearview mirror, to use a racing term. So all we can ask is thank you so much for your support, but stay safe, stay healthy, and keep your chins up, because things are going to be better. And racing will begin once again in March or in April time, particularly Caterham when they kick off at Cadwell Park at the beginning of April. So if you do want to get some proper Caterham racing, do go to caterhamcars.com, go check out the motorsport section. You'll be able to see the 2021 calendar. And of course, do head to the website caterhamracer.com for all the info on what will be happening next in these series, and also check them out on Facebook and on YouTube, and do like and subscribe to both of those as well. So from Chris Hutchinson, from SR Scott Woodwiss, and from everyone involved, all our sponsors, all of our drivers, thank you so much for tuning and supporting. Bring incredible season.
I think Scott's internet has cut out quite an off-due moment. I'm going to sign off as well. So thank you very much, everybody. We will see you again next year.